Amazon, an announcement this week of Alexa Plus.
Mercury, a new diffusion model that they say is 10 times faster than traditional LLMs while matching their quality.
Microsoft Research just announced a new model, BioEmu 1.
Norwegian robotics company 1X just launched Neo Gamma, their next generation humanoid robot.
Tabletop R&D have developed technology that helps board game designers identify rule flaws before market release, potentially transforming the traditional game development process. Pew Research has recently released a survey that actually says 80% of Americans are not using AI at work, and those of us who are using it are not exactly raving about it or exciting about it.
xAI's new Grok 3 model faced a backlash after users discovered it was refusing to mention negative details about President Trump and Elon Musk.
Chegg has filed a lawsuit against Google, claiming that the company's AI-generated summaries of search results have hurt its traffic and revenue.
Welcome back to What the AI, where we decode the latest developments in the world of artificial intelligence. I'm Jeff Keltner.
And I'm Annie Delgado.
Hey, Annie, how was your weekend?
It was pretty good. How about you? I finished my vacation. Now I'm back at home. So
Finished
had
the
a little bit
vacation
of
back.
change of
Love it.
weather from Palm Springs to the Bay Area. So
Palm Springs, yeah, a little bit. Palm Springs is just kind of, it's got its own permanent weather pattern there. It's always
yeah.
warm and dry. Good. We had a good weekend. We got my kids to watch high school teen drama rom-coms, which is like a favorite category for my wife and I. So I feel like there's a major parenting win to get teenage boys to watch high school teen romance dramas. That was good.
This is a huge parenting win. I can't wait to, when my teenage son gets home from school today, tell him that your son's watched this and encourage him to do the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love we watched the To All the Boys I Love Before from Netflix movie. And I love that the couple in this movie at one point agrees to do a doubleheader of Fight Club and 16 Candles, which might be, on the docket for us in the future to do because my kids have been asking for Fight Club. So now we're gonna have to find the right John Hughes movie to like pair with Fight Club to make for a doubleheader for the boys in the future. So I felt like a very proud parenting moment when I had the boys I would say they cringe watched it, but they did watch it. So that was good.
Hey, cringe watch, at least they got through it. So, and you got to enjoy it. Apparently it's one of your favorite genres, which would not have been
I
on
do.
my
The
bingo
wife and
card, but
I like the lighthearted, easy candy movies. Like life's serious enough. I need little popcorn and candy for my movies.
well, the Oscars is this weekend. And so if you want to watch some heavy movies and not candy movies, watch all those contenders. Those ones are much
All right.
heavier.
Yeah, that's every time I try and watch all the Oscar contenders, my wife and I's conclusion is we're not Oscar movie people. Like we watch them all and we go, these were not my favorite. I didn't like we're just some people love them and they do it. And we tried for a couple of years to watch them all, and then it was like, yeah, this is not us. We're not these people.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, let's get into it. We'll start off with our AI radar. And I've got a section I wanted to introduce this week, and we call it quick hits, which is like just little tidbits you need to know about what happened in the world, but maybe we don't need to talk about for too long. So I'll try and hit through these quick.
Sounds good.
All right, Microsoft released a native Copilot app for Mac. So if what you are missing is one native app for an AI chatbot on your Mac, well, Microsoft now has theirs. It will, have access to kind of the web-based version, all the things that Microsoft Copilot can do. I guess if you're a Mac user and a Microsoft Office user, this is a pretty good win. But there's that one. For those of you who love making short, funny videos with AI, Alibaba's Tongyi Lab just released Wan 2.1, an open source suite of powerful video generation models that hit state-of-the-art benchmarks. So, and much faster, they hit 2.5 times as fast as others. So if you like, they're all kind of short form videos, but if you like making some short form fun videos, new, fast, open source model for you to try. In larger US AI company news, Anthropic released its anticipated Claude Sonnet 3.7. Can't get off the bad naming convention, Sonnet 3.7. This was roughly state-of-the-art. So kind of matches a 4.0 kind of level. It has they call it a hybrid thinking mode. So it's kind of somewhere between the non-thinking and the thinking models. It has an extended thinking mode for those who want to do it for more things, for want to use the kind of deeper thought version. And they also launched Claude Code, which is they called it an active collaborator that can search and read code and edit files, run tests, push commits to GitHub, for kind of an interactive agentic version of Claude for coding. And then not to be left out, OpenAI with a series of announcements this week, because that's what they have to do. They've made their deep research features available to ChatGPT Plus. Team and Edu says the $20 tier as opposed to $200 tier. So $20 you get 10 of these, I think, a month, as opposed to $120 a month for $200. So if you're paying the $20, now you can try out the kind of PhD level researcher, write you a 15-page paper, deep research capability.
Do you think that was forced by the Perplexity announcement we talked about last week? They Perplexity made theirs available, so now OpenAI had to follow suit?
I don't think so. I think OpenAI is just quickly trying to iterate on launching to the pro, give the people give the people paying $200 something for the value, increase the efficiency of execution so the cost of executing that many queries is not as high, and then push it down to the plus and ultimately the free. I think that's their plan. You'll see that in some of their other announcements. I'm sure maybe it was accelerated a little bit by Perplexity, but I think this is their plan. And if they keep doing it, it'll be hard for anybody to justify $200 a month. Although many more queries here. So if you're using it substantially, and the people who use that many, I think, deep research queries find it worth $200 a month pretty easily.
Mm, okay, sounds good.
Maybe a more fun one. OpenAI launched a GPT 4.0 mini powered version of advanced voice search. This is the kind of real time human conversational to free users. And so this is a pretty big deal. If you've used the advanced voice mode, it is a kind of game changing interface mode versus chatbot because it really feels like talking to a thoughtful person.
Yeah, I was really excited about this one because I think a lot of, right now, certain demographics of people are getting great use out of the chat functionality, but there's a lot of demographics of people that might really enjoy interacting with an LLM, but not in the chat interface. So I was pretty excited about this one. I can't wait for telling my mom to take it for a spin.
That's right. This is the grandparents' parents' IT support kind of version of, I think, making ChatGPT really accessible. And if you haven't tried it, I highly recommend for the audience, you do give the advanced mode, voice mode a try. It feels very different. It is very real time and interactive. It lets you interrupt. It responds. It's got much more intonation than you might expect. And so it's a very cool way to interact with these tools. I've got the action button on my iPhone set up to go into this. And my biggest frustration is it makes me unlock the phone because I just want to pull it out and ask questions and have a conversation. I have to face unlock, and it's like I would really love to be able to disable that requirement because it's so useful to be able to access it instantaneously.
Yeah.
All right, final quick hit. OpenAI also under the wire on Thursday. They decided to just make my life difficult writing the rundown, and they announced GPT 4.5. So we got 4.0, we have 4.0 mini, and we have they're theoretically 5.0 coming. We have all the O1, O3 models, but this is 4.5. It is not a reasoning model, so it's not in the O series of thinking models. It is just the largest, most complex pre-trained, the kind of like that scaling loss training stuff we talked about model that they have, and it's really fascinating to me a little bit because it got a little bit better on benchmarks, but it does not beat out the reasoning models on most of the benchmarks for coding or math or those kinds of things. So it's not the most complicated or the most capable model that they've released, but I would say people say it's got a better personality. It's got a little bit more world knowledge because it's got more data in that pre-training process. But it gives kind of more thoughtful, reasonable answers. So as a chat partner, as a conversationalist, people like it a lot better than even 4.0. So that was interesting though, because it really shows you that the scaling laws are hitting limitations. Like they made a much bigger model, much more training data and scale and compute, and it got better in certain ways, but not smarter in terms of its ability to pass these benchmarks and tests. So interesting, but maybe a really fun writing partner or chatbot partner. In limited release now coming out to the pro users. And then they said, Sam kind of implied that it's extremely expensive to run and they're running out of GPUs. So it will be coming, as we kind of talked about deep research, into the plus in the free tiers over time, but they've got to get the efficiency higher because they're like literally can't, it's expensive to run. And I think they just don't have the capacity to run it at scale right now.
Amazing. Well, that was a lot in the rundown, a lot coming out this week. Let's dive deep into some other things we've seen from other companies, specifically Amazon, which you didn't get to mention in your quick hits, but Amazon is joining the group as well with an announcement this week of Alexa Plus, which is the long-awaited upgrade to really one of the first voice assistants we all used. And she is getting a major AI upgrade. So Alexa in the future, I think starting around October, although we'll see when the launch actually happens, she will be able to connect and leverage multiple LLMs, including the Amazon proprietary LLM Nova, along with Anthropic's Claude, and she will make decisions about which one to sort of leverage. This is sort of, in my view, the first real mainstream agentic capability that we might see people using. There's talk and demos that you can use it to make dinner reservations and book flights and, order something on Uber Eats, maybe even call your Uber, who knows, because they're actually going to be integrated with a bunch of different companies. And of course, Amazon has major distribution advantage here because so many people already have the Echo at home. And this is just an upgrade to the ecosystem. If you're a Prime user, which many of us are, it's free. If you're not a Prime user, it's gonna be $20 a month, so similar cost to some of the other, LLMs we see. So I'm pretty excited to see this come out. I think it's gonna be helpful.
Do you have Amazon Alexa Echoes in your house, Annie? Is it gonna be I
I have
triggered
an
them right now?
embarrassing number of Echoes, and I do talk to her a lot. I will ask her to add something to my grocery list, that type of thing, but I can totally see a future where she's sitting in my kitchen and I'm like, "Alexa, I'm out of, olive oil. Send me some new olive oil," and she can actually do that. And so I think that this is gonna be interesting. Although, I will say, after I read about this release and watched some of the demo videos and stuff, I went to my own Echo and I said, "Hey, Alexa, I heard you're getting an upgrade. When can I find it available?" And she said, "Do you want a PlayStation?" And I said, "No, I don't want a PlayStation. I wanna know about your upgrade." So,
I'm glad your kids were in
maybe
the room when she asked that because they would have, "Yes, yes, 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 yes." And then you would
I
have had
know.
a PlayStation coming next day air on Prime.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So, are you a Amazon Echo user? Do you have one?
I don't. I've got a bunch of the Google Homes, and I switched because the Alexa was so bad for anything other than, like, 1 or 2 things, and Google being my email calendar, search, but right now, they barely get used to turn on and off certain lights. Like, that's real all we really use them for, and to ask, "What's the weather going to be today?" when you're getting dressed in the morning. That's, like, the primary use cases. So I'll be really interested to see, and it is a really it the business model implications of it being free for Prime, where it's 20 bucks outside. So now you're going, do I pay ChatGPT? Do I pay Anthropic? Do I pay Perplexity? Or do I just get Alexa for free with Prime? Because I'm going to pay my Prime anyway because I get so many values. So that kind of distribution advantage. And then this idea of none of those bots except Google are integrated into kind of ambient home availability. You gotta have your phone with you or something else. So whether or not those things, the business model of being part of Prime and the technical model of being kind of like ambient home computing as opposed to personal device taking with you computing, it'll be interesting to see how that changes the usage and what that does for the usage of Alexa.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I think also, so in your rundown, you were talking about the voice capability that OpenAI has sort of recently made free. I think people are likely to use the voice capabilities of Alexa similarly or even more frequently, right? Because you can actually have a conversation, and instead of saying, "Here's something I found on the web," and she, tells you something or other, she'll actually be able to have a more conversational approach to it. So I think people will find that useful as well.
Yeah, it's true. It's not your natural instinct to have a conversation with your phone in that way. I mean, Siri was so bad for so many years, and it is for Alexa. Like you talk to her. I mean, that's the way the whole mode of interaction. So I'll be really curious to see how that plays out. But if we have like our big handful of companies in there, one more big player got to throw their hat in the ring.
That's right.
Moving on to our next story. One of my favorite Silicon Valley sayings is speed is my favorite feature. This is one of my favorite things from Google. And a group from Stanford called Inception Labs just emerged from stealth with Mercury, a new diffusion model that they say is 10 times faster than traditional LLMs while matching their quality.
Wow.
That's kind of crazy. I guess speed is their favorite feature too.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So tell us about it. What is the difference? What is the core difference that makes this one so much faster?
Yeah, it's interesting. So diffusion models you typically think of as how we do image or video generation. And as opposed to traditional, what we call auto-regressive LLMs, which generate one token at a time, taking into account the entire context, everything that's already generated, but these kind of go token at a time and they generate. And diffusion model starts with, for an image with like a big picture of like static and then resolves it to be closer and closer to what you're asking for. And but it does the whole image at once. It kind of refines the whole image. As they're using the same thing on text answers and finding that it's equally performant and extremely fast. So kind of beats or matches coding performance for things like 4.0 Mini or Claude Pre 5 and doing it at 5 to 10 times as fast, which is, again, a lot of times you'll see in Silicon Valley that, capabilities are less important to users than instantaneous responses. So I don't know if have you gotten a chance to use this model and like felt that difference in speed?
I actually have, and I was a little bit skeptical because I thought, like I actually think, for most of my standard queries, like ChatGPT is pretty fast. I'm pretty happy with its speed. How much of a difference could this actually make? And so I went and tried to replicate a conversation with this model that I had had earlier in the week with ChatGPT, and I got to be honest, like it knocked my socks off. It was significantly faster and basically provided the same information as ChatGPT. So it's not like it got anything wrong or like less rich in terms of how the responses came through, but it was much, much, much faster. So I was surprised and delighted. I went in as a skeptic and I was impressed.
Surprised
And
and delighted. That's what everybody
yes,
aims for, right? That's a product
that's
win,
right.
surprised and delighted.
Yeah. Well, and when you think about it, like we talk about, the mission of AI is to sort of make this computer system think like a brain. And when you think intuitively, a diffusion system is much more like a brain. We don't think linearly like that. We have a big jumbled mess that then we sort of diffuse into a coherent thought. And so maybe this really is the next sort of frontier of developing these capabilities.
Yeah, that was other than the speed being a meaningful difference in the user experience, the big takeaway I had was, like, just a reminder of how, it can feel like we've come so far, and that's true, but I think we're also still very early in the evolution of how these I mean, reasoning models are a pretty new evolution, and that was a fundamental rethink of where and when intelligence would happen in the models, and then this is it's still an LLM, but it is a very different format for one, so the sense that there are still you can worry about, are we optimizing the LLM transformer model? Have we reached the peak? But it's like, well, yeah, but that's probably not the last peak. That's probably not the last advancement in underlying approach that we're gonna have. And so it's exciting to see people really rethinking some of the fundamental assumptions and approaches. I think we'll see more of that over the next couple of years, particularly if we do see scaling laws hit a wall where you can't just throw more compute and get a massively better model. You go, well, what else can we do to change the way this model works to get, improvement increases? I imagine this is not the last version of those we'll see.
Yeah. Well, moving on to our AI in the wild section. I'm going to sound like a broken record here, Jeff, but guess what? Another week, another biomedical model announcement. Microsoft Research just announced a new model, BioEmu 1, which is an AI system that predicts how proteins shape and move, generating thousands of protein structures per hour while matching the accuracy of supercomputer simulations. So, again, we've talked about protein folding a lot. It's an incredibly complex problem. We're seeing a lot of models come out. I think this one is actually pretty cool because, again, Microsoft has made it open source, and so the idea here is like make this available to people so they can go and use it to accelerate their research and data into these protein foldings to predict, how disease will progress, whether you will be somebody likely to get a disease, how to treat the disease. So another exciting advancement on the medical front.
Yeah, I don't know if I like BioEmu 1 better or worse than, like, all the 4001 bad naming conventions. Deep research is a standard, but at least it's unique, it's different. But it does seem like every week we get some we're gonna have to try and find a new model announcement in this space that's not biomedical in nature because I can't tell the difference between these. But I still am at least as excited about AI in these kinds of spaces as I am in the general LLM chatbot that I think all of us center our minds around because it's something we can relate to. Like, I understand that. I could go have a chat with that new diffusion model and compare it. I can't compare all these protein models or even tell you how they're different, but I do think at a fundamental level, they are maybe more exciting for the future of humanity in terms of what they can unlock for research and advancements than, a better version of ChatGPT that's a little more empathetic.
Yeah, I have the same sort of question. Like these, I'm very excited about them, but my question is like, with all these different models, are they fundamentally really different underneath in terms of what they're targeting? Because obviously this space is so complex, and so I'm just, are they actually competitors with each other, or are they supporting each other? I don't know. It's something I would like to learn about. Maybe I'll go ask ChatGPT about it later.
Do a perplexity deep research ask.
Yeah.
I think there are. I mean, I don't know about each of them, but there are definitely different areas in there, and I imagine you'll see more things like Google's AI co-scientists say, "Hey, here's four really useful models for protein analysis, synthesis. How will it change over time? How will it adapt? Like, how do we put them together to actually, develop new treatments, the enzymes that are eating down plastics, things like this. I imagine that there are lots of pieces to that puzzle, and having different models that can do different things, and then coordinating them to solve bigger challenges, I think is probably what the future looks like. But I also need to go and do a little research because I feel like my son's in high school chemistry. Maybe next year when he's in high school biology, I will remember more of my protein folding and structure. I get a little tutorial as I help him with homework, and then I'll be able to better understand these models.
Yeah, makes sense.
Well, if you got another week, another biomedical model, I got another week, another robotics announcement. Meet your new roommate, Norwegian robotics company 1X, not to be confused with X1, just launched Neo Gamma, their next generation humanoid robot, specifically designed for the home environment. It's interesting. It has a softer, like knit fabric texture. It's kind of emotive eyes and rings, like ears that are kind of like rings with LEDs. But it really intended. They've got videos of it cleaning and putting away groceries and cleaning the windows and doing this kind of stuff. And then interesting to me at the end of their kind of unveiling video, it sits down on the couch. I don't I don't know if I want it sitting on the couch like that. I don't. Maybe if it's ChatGPT and it's a friend, but it's interesting to think about how this thing will interact and where these robots will really. It seems like there's a lot of emphasis on humanoid style robots in the home. I'm really curious what I'm going to think about having one of them in my home.
Yeah, we've joked in the past about how I want a robot to do my laundry, but I don't know if my robot that does laundry, I really want to look like a human. And I didn't actually realize that until I watched the video, and it was really creepy. It was like having a soft stormtrooper walking around the house and pouring your wine and, like, picking your keys up off the floor, and I was like, "Oh, that's kinda creepy," and maybe it's because I watched this, like, sort of creepy AI movie last weekend, and so that's why it creeped me out a little bit, but, yeah, it was interesting because it looks very human-like.
It is. I mean, my wife was watching it and going, "Why? I just want Rosie from the Jetsons. That looks like a robot, that's noticeably different than a human." And but I think the challenge you have is that these robots are operating in spaces that were built for humans, and so in a factory, you don't have humanoid-looking robots. Why not? Because you build the space for the robots, so it's optimized for their function. But in the real world, we built this for humans with the certain size and shape, and you can fit through a door, so you can't. Your things like the refrigerator are made for hands that are about this size and have this many fingers and can. And so we're going to be somewhat limited, I think, in our ability to get too far from the human form. But there is a question like, do you want a face? Do you want a head? Like, it doesn't need to have a head. You know what I mean? It can have a pretty different look. And it's interesting that people seem to be in the. It looks kind of like a stormtrooper, or like iRobot. If you anybody watch the iRobot movie, it just kind of looks like that, like anything you've seen in a science fiction movie. And it's an interesting question if that's the right answer, but it seems pretty clear that in the next handful of years, you will be able to purchase at an unknown price one of these things to do some number of household chores, which I don't know. If you think about how much you'd have to pay a person to do those household chores, they could charge a pretty good amount of money depending on how long the lifespan is.
Yeah, well, and it was interesting, I was reading the release, and the company basically said, if we want robots in our home, what we have to do is put robots in our home because they need to learn, and so they need to actually be in the environment so they can get that data. And so the best way to sort of accelerate this progress of a robot being able to do your laundry and cook for you and all this stuff is actually just to get what we have out there and have it start learning. So
I can't wait till one of them has the voice from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Says, "I'm sorry, Dave, I cannot do that." You know,
yeah,
well,
right?
great moment. Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, again, another week, another gaming announcement, although this one not virtual games or digital games, but actual literal board games, which doesn't sound like something you would think was going to be a early adopter of AI, but nonetheless, here we are. Tabletop R&D, an AI startup founded by computer scientists from Queen Mary University of London, have developed technology that helps board game designers identify rule flaws before market release, potentially transforming the traditional game development process. So this is actually pretty cool. This is not generative AI. So they're not using generative AI to sort of do the creative process to come up with a new game idea. What they're doing is taking some game idea that they have come up with and then using deterministic AI to actually pressure test all of the rules that they've
Yeah.
set forth and find the pitfalls and find the loopholes and all that type of stuff to make sure the game is actually going to be stimulating
And fun and
and
yeah.
fun and all that kind of stuff. So this is pretty interesting to see come out, and I think there's a lot of industries that could benefit from similar types of deterministic AI use.
Yeah, it's interesting. You hear about Deep Blue beating Gary Kasparov or AlphaGo beating the world Go champion, and this is really interesting use case of the same technology, which is like we get an AI that's pretty good at planning a game, and then we go, is the game fun to play? And it was interesting because I think we had the ability to have like different levels of strategy. Like, is you a skilled player or a novice player? Like, how does that play out and what happens? And where do games get stuck? And it's a fascinating way to be. I always wondered like who came up with like in Catan like how many of this and that to buy or whatever like where do those numbers come from? Who has got the job? And now I imagine you can go tweak those things and find out like, oh yeah, this guy over here has got too much of an advantage for X, but now we can tweak the little ratios down and now it's going to be perfect. So really fascinating way to actually pressure test if these games play the way you want, have the kind of game style and fairness and whatever that are going to work out well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Are you a big board game player?
I would say my oldest son likes long board games, so I'll say I won't play Risk. The rest of us are like, if it's not over in 30 minutes, I lose interest. So we play the short board games, but the long ones we do not have the patience for. At least my younger son, my wife and I are like, not so interested.
Got it. Well, I love playing games, so I'm hoping that this is going to increase the quality of output of new games coming out.
Now we gotta ask a question. Hey, what are your favorite board games? What do you guys play?
Well, probably the game we play most often is Catan. That's a favorite of my kids for sure. They love that. I actually also really love card games. So one of the
Mm.
family games we play all the time is a game called Tripoli, which is sort of like a hearts poker hybrid. That is probably our most frequently played game. And then I also like collaborative games, which is a controversial topic in my house because my kids really like there to be a winner and I like there to be a team win. But, have you ever played the game Pandemic?
Yeah, we have Pandemic and we play Pandemic pretty regularly.
Yeah, I like that game a lot, which it was, during the pandemic, my kids were like, "Oh, I get it." Like, it was very interesting, so
Yeah, that was a fun one, and we've become mahjong players here of late, so we're playing mahjong, which is it's kind of funny because you see all these games and they're kinda like it's kinda like a version of, like, gin rummy with different, different really like the same thing, like, three of a kinds and pairs and runs and flushes and like, "Oh, yeah, it's" I get the game. But that's been our recent game of choice, and it's got a fun clacking sound when you move the tiles around, so the kids like that. And that I don't know the Chinese names for any of the tiles, they enjoy that they can make fun of me for that.
All right, Jeff. Well, moving on to AI alignment. Obviously, big promise that AI is going to upend the workplace, but Pew Research has recently released a survey that actually says maybe the adoption has been slower than we might think. So much hype around AI, revolutionizing the workplace. But according to this survey, 80% of Americans are not using AI at work. And those of us who are using it are not exactly raving about it or excited about it. So this is interesting to see. Some of the takeaways that I noticed is a lot of people aren't viewing AI as a potential to make them better at their job. They're more fearful of using AI, and I think that that's preventing some people from trying it. Of like, I don't want this thing to replace me, so I don't maybe wanna see how good it actually is. And I think this is a really fascinating thing. I've seen this play out with folks that I know at work too, and I always tell them, "You shouldn't be afraid of AI taking your job. You should be afraid of somebody who is better at using AI than you are taking your job." So, like, get in early, learn it, see how it can make you smarter, better, faster, more accurate, all of the things. But we're seeing a relatively slow adoption. Did you see this survey?
I did, I saw it, I read it, I also found it interesting, you always sit between the kind of, like, AI maximalists who think, like, the entire universe is gonna fundamentally shift in the next 5 years and nothing will be as it was, and the people who go like, "This thing still can't count the number of R's in strawberry, what are we talking about? This is worthless, like, it's of no value," and I always find, like, both those positions to be pretty unconvincing, so this didn't surprise me, I felt like it was, I guess not only have 80% of people not used AI in the workplace, 17% are not even aware of it being a thing that you can use in the workplace, which I'm
Right.
like, wow,
That's pretty
where have you been?
high.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I think it just speaks to how long diffusion of these things really takes into there are obviously certain kinds of jobs. If you're a software developer and you're not aware of or using AI, you're probably your job is being taken by someone who is. Most other, even white collar professional creative fields are not there yet, right? Where you really have to be here or you're behind the curve. I also thought it was interesting this study the users who are using AI at work have found it substantially more useful at speeding up what they do than improving the quality of output, which feels to me like I find it does both. I'm actually better at what I can produce and faster, but it just shows you that even those people who are using it for their work are probably not getting the most out of it they can. So again, I'm a big believer that this will be a fundamentally transformative to the economy, but that may take decades to play out. It's not a 2 or 3 year thing. It's a very long term thing that plays out kind of slowly over time.
Yeah, I agree with that it'll be, over time. I don't know if decades is the right time horizon. I'm hoping it's gonna be a little faster than that, but generally agree with you. I listened to another podcast this week, with a really good practical suggestion about using AI, and basically what the person said is a lot of people are misusing AI because what happens is they try it out and it makes a mistake, and then they go, "Oh, well, this thing sucks. I'm not gonna use it anymore. I'm gonna fall back on my manual methods." And the person said, "You should think about AI as a really talented employee that you just hired. The first time they make a mistake, you're gonna teach them. You're not going to fire them, you're gonna teach them, and that is how you should be interacting with an AI chatbot as well. If they get something wrong, just tell them, "Hey, this is the fact pattern that you got wrong," or, "This is how I'm thinking about it," and think about yourself as the advisor to this AI to make it smarter so that it can serve your use case better. And I think that's not how a lot of people are thinking about it. So I think that was like a pretty good paradigm shift that folks should think about as they're interacting with it. Think about it as your mentee and somebody that you are using to do help and research for you, but you also have a part in training it.
Yeah, if you gave the go research this area project to a junior employee, you wouldn't like just take everything at face value. You would dive into some things and find it useful. It's also, I think, important to keep in mind the kind of task you're asking. Like, is this a purely yes, no, right, wrong, factual based task? Or is this like, I use this every week to help with the rundown, to help with my social media posts around this? And like, there's not really a right or wrong way to describe these things or to summarize a long text into a short text. There's just different ways. And so there's obviously, it's a different kind of use case and the errors are different and less concerning in some ways on a subjective feel type thing like, "Hey, help me make this writing sound less aggressive." And like that, like, "I wrote this email when I was angry, help me sound less angry." Like, that's not a right wrong versus like, "Hey, I'm going out, tell me if this regulation applies in this instance." Well, like, that's a hard question that reasonable minds can disagree on in many instances, and B, it's very fact based. So it's easy to look at it and go, "Well, it doesn't know what it's saying." Well, yeah, but if you wanted to help you improve your writing in your policy statement, it probably is very, very good. So you got to understand those kind of different nuances. But I agree. Like, think of it like an employee and train it and remember that it's a junior employee. It's not an expert yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly right.
All right. Well, next story up, XAI with a few safety fumbles this week. XAI's new Grok 3 model, which is maximally truth seeking, according to Elon, faced a backlash after users discovered it was refusing to mention negative details about President Trump and Elon Musk. Whoops.
This was fascinating. Last week we were talking about how we're generally pro, the seek the truth sort of model, and they definitely had a misstep here. So tell us what happened.
Yeah, so users found that Grok would just not provide kind of controversial takes about Donald Trump and Elon Musk being spreaders of misinformation. And it looks like some engineers, some XAI engineers, got onto Twitter and kind of, or X, I guess I should say, and said this was a bad patch. Somebody who didn't understand how we operate and think here, and it shouldn't have been done, and we're gonna roll it back. And my understanding it has mostly, but I think the phrase is was this engineer had not fully absorbed XAI's culture yet, which maybe could be said about many AI models, has not fully absorbed my culture yet. But interesting that they were really, I do think it points to the difficulty of, do you want to spread misinformation, knowingly inaccurate facts? There was another instance that came out after we recorded this where Meta's feed was messed with and it started showing a lot more violent imagery to users. And the idea that like there is a very real thing that we are putting some of these safeguards in place to prevent. Like we don't want feeds flooded with violent imagery. That's just not what we want. And yet like, it's easy to step over the line and do things that are inappropriate, and I think it's a harder balance than the absolutists on either side think to maintain that right. But I don't know, what's your take?
It is a hard balance, to figure out how to get right, but one thing that I don't know where they will land in terms of finding the balance, but there was a hot second of radical transparency there that I enjoyed where, I saw, somebody asked a question about it and the Grok output was literally, "I am not supposed to talk about this." Like, it disclosed that it was censored, and I was like, "I actually
That's maximally truth
that's
seeking.
that's maximally the truth seeking." So they said, "Well, it said something like, "I did some research, but I'm not supposed to talk about it, so let me do some different research," basically, and, like, look for other information, and I was like, "Well, that's
Reminds me of
transparent."
it's not a bad, that was the compromise Google made for a long time in China before exiting, was like they would tell you, hey, there are a bunch of results that you're not allowed to see according to Chinese law. So we've taken them out, but it would tell you, hey, yeah, we're not showing you a whole bunch of stuff because we've been asked not to. And so that is an interesting balance. And I'm curious if we'll see that kind of, and hopefully in these cases, unlike in the Chinese case, they'll be able to go, well, show them to me anyway. I don't care what you say. But I do think that labeling is useful. But it was interesting to see right after, Elon has really put a stake in the ground as being, we're going to be the ones that don't censor information. And then like a week later, out there and their engineers have started censoring certain kinds of information that are negative to Elon, which I tend to look at this less as a nefarious plot to hide the truth from people, and probably is honestly just an engineer who did something that the company disagree with. And that's the reality, is there's individuals with power to do that. It does make me wonder how well their launch QA process is run, because that's the kind of thing I would expect a couple of people would have to sign off on before it went into prod. And maybe they need a little better release management there at XAI that was able to get out the door with one engineer who had not fully absorbed the culture, being able to push to prod, might be something we want to change.
I mean, that's usually the type of thing that I would say, but that was, of course, my thing too. Like, who did your code review and where was your boss's oversight of your work if you were able to just change this algorithm on your own? But which is why a lot of people think like there's some bigger conspiracy that, of course, that's not what happened. But I don't know if I was to bet, I would bet on the looser controls about deployment over the bigger conspiracy theory. So,
Yeah, if Elon is anything, he's a move fast and break things kind of guy. So the idea that they would have, limited code reviews to push to product, particularly in a product where you just like roll it back. More concerning if Elon's taking that approach in Doge and governmental policy, because those things are harder to roll back sometimes than a model release that you can just click the rollback button and it's gone.
agreed. Well, our last topic of the day, Jeff, we can't sign off without talking about Google. So I don't know if you saw this, but online education company Chegg has filed a lawsuit, an antitrust lawsuit, against Google, claiming that the company's AI generated summaries of search results have hurt its traffic and revenue. This is believed to be the first antitrust lawsuit filed by a single company over the AI overview. So this is pretty interesting. Basically, what Chegg is alleging is, hey, you pay you, Google, to serve advertisements that are going to bring clicks to people who come to our website and buy our services. And that has been a useful model for us to drive online traffic. But now your AI summaries are so good that people don't click through on our ad because they just get the answer from you directly in the AI summary itself. So as I was reading this, I'm like, man, Google is really in a catch 22 here, right? Where to keep up with the AI wave and to keep consumers happy, I think they really have to use these AI summaries and not just give a bunch of websites and advertisements. But their bills are paid by the advertisers who maybe are going to get hurt because of less click throughs if their AI is better. So, as an ex Googler, what's your thought here?
I don't have a lot of sympathy for the check. I mean, it's clearly a difficult question, and I think Google's in a tough bind this way. They actually came out and said, look, we're sending more clicks off of Google's site through AI overviews than we were without. Of course, the nature of those clicks could be different, and whenever that happens, some advertisers are going to go, "What the heck? We're not getting them kind of clicks." But I do think there's this underlying belief that's very challenging for Google. That's kind of the same thing you saw in the Yelp cases, where they like somebody believes that they're entitled to traffic from Google forever for something, and like it may not be the best. Google's for all their flaws, and there are many. I do think their fundamental belief is what do we do that's best for the user, and that may not be best for the advertiser, but they're going, like Yelp to go, hey, where's this restaurant? Like they don't want to link to a Yelp review of the restaurant. They want to know where the restaurant is, or a website for the restaurant, whatever. And so the idea that we have to stick in place the way any internet technology worked for the benefit of its ecosystem, and then it can't get any better because that better for the user is worse for some advertiser or business on the back end, I think is a really tough perspective to take, because it really, I mean, these guys really want Google to just like, oh no, 10 blue links, be how you were, advertisements up top, like don't ever change it because that was good for my business model. I go, well, I'm not sure you're entitled to a business that's based on Google never changing. Like maybe Google's allowed to change and you just got a deal. There are some real questions about training data and scraping of data to make those AI overviews that I think are very legitimate. But the sense that the decrease in clicks to your advertisements is justification to sue somebody because they owed you the clicks in some sense, to me is just a profoundly troubling perspective on how the internet should work and how business models should be kind of stuck in time.
Well, I think the other challenge here for Chegg is if you are in the business of, tutoring and supplying information, the world has changed. There's now ChatGPT and there's Claude and there's Perplexity and there's all these competitors that you didn't have before. And yelling at Google about it might not be the best use of your time and money. And it might be towards finding some other competitive advantage that is going to, keep your company thriving. But yell at Google, they are. And we'll see how this lawsuit plays out over time.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see where they choose to pursue this, because I feel like the courts and the laws in the US are likely to be shifting towards being less friendly. Like Lena Khan would have been a huge fan of this, but she's she's not running the FTC anymore. And the new guy, less interested in such kind of endeavors. I think the same will be true at the DOJ. But the EU still seems to have a general perspective that Google and the other big tech are bad just because they're big, and that they're owe some obligation to support the broader ecosystem of companies due to their bigness. And so, if I were Chegg, and I don't know anything about Chegg's international business, but I'd be looking for an EU country to sue Google and not the US, because I feel like there's much more um, strong support for this kind of perspective than there has been in the US historically, but certainly than I expect there to be in the US over the next at least 4 years. So maybe a little bit of shopping for venues would be in order if you want to be successful with that lawsuit. Because I bet the EU is a more friendly place. I'm not sure if Chegg operates in the EU, but I think it's going to be a tough road to hoe in the US here for a while.
There you go. Legal advice provided by Jeff Keltner.
I'm
Our
not a lawyer,
podcast,
so don't take any of my advice for legal advice, but I like to play one on podcasts. So there you go. That's what you get.
of course. All right. Well, so good to see you. We'll see you next week, Jeff.
We'll see you next week, Annie. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Ready to expand your AI knowledge? Want to become the go-to AI expert in your organization? Take the next step with Upstart's AI certification for financial services. This comprehensive course simplifies the fundamentals of artificial intelligence for financial services professionals. Both the course and this podcast are brought to you by Upstart, whose leading AI lending marketplace connects millions of consumers to banks and credit unions that leverage Upstart's AI technology to deliver superior credit products, from personal loans to auto loans to home equity lines of credit. If you learned something useful this week, hit subscribe on YouTube or leave us a rating on iTunes or Spotify. Your support can help others discover What the AI. And finally, share your biggest AI questions and insights with us at email@whattheai.fm. We really do read every message, and we do our best to cover them all on the show.